All right, today we're jumping into one of the most dramatic chapters in the entire book of Revelation. It's this incredible, symbolic story all about conflict, what looks like total defeat, and then a shocking, ultimate vindication. And this really is the central question of Revelation 11. It sets the whole stage for a story that, it just rockets from the streets of a rebellious city all the way up to the very throne room of heaven. It's a classic clash between earthly power and divine authority. So the story kicks off with the arrival of these two super mysterious figures. They're just known as the two witnesses. They show up with this divine mission to prophesy. And let me tell you, they are armed with some absolutely extraordinary power. And when I say power, I mean power. For a full 3.5 years, they prophesy, and they're protected by this incredible display of divine authority. I mean, they can stop the rain, they can turn water into blood, they can strike the earth with pretty much any plague they want. The text even says that if anyone tries to mess with them, fire literally shoots out of their mouths and just consumes their enemies. So for a while at least, they're completely untouchable. But, and you knew there was a but, their mission has a set time limit. The scripture is super clear that when their testimony is finished, the conflict just explodes. A beast comes up from the abyss, makes war on them, conquers them, and kills them. And this brings us to, the second act of the story. After being completely invincible for so long, the witnesses fall. And their apparent defeat, it becomes this huge public spectacle in a very specific and very symbolic place. The imagery here is so stark, and it's totally intentional. Their bodies aren't buried. Nope, they're just left out, in the open, in the street, for everyone to see. And the location? It's identified as the very city where their Lord was crucified, which points right at Jerusalem. But the text actually gives the city a few other names as well. See, the text describes the city using these really heavy symbolic terms. It's spiritually called Sodom, which stands for its deep moral corruption. It's also called Egypt, a symbol of its history of oppressing God's people. So when you combine all three names, Sodom, Egypt, and Jerusalem, what you get is this picture of a world system that's just dripping with moral decay, oppression, and a total rejection of God's Messiah. So how does the world react to God's messengers finally being silenced? They throw a global party. I'm not kidding. The text says the people of the earth rejoice over them and celebrate by sending each other gifts. And why? Because these two prophets had, quote, tormented them with their message of truth. So their deaths are seen as this huge victory for humanity's rebellion. But just when it seems like the world has won, right? When it looks like rebellion has had the final say, the entire narrative just flips on its head. The story takes this sudden supernatural turn that absolutely no one on earth saw coming. So for 3.5 days, the world is celebrating. The bodies of the witnesses are lying there in the street like a trophy. But then, on that 3.5 day, something impossible happens. The breath of life from God enters them. They stand up right there on their feet, and you can just imagine this great fear just falls on everyone who sees it. This is it. This is the moment of their public vindication. While their enemies are just watching in absolute terror, a loud voice from heaven commands, "Come up here." And then they just ascend to heaven in a cloud, right in front of the very same people who were just celebrating their deaths. And the moment they ascend, judgment falls. Instantly, a massive earthquake strikes the city. And in that earthquake, 7,000 people are killed. A tenth of the whole city collapses. And the survivors? They're absolutely terrified. The very same people who were celebrating are now forced to give glory to the God of heaven. It's a total divine reversal. What looked like defeat was actually just the setup for a display of ultimate power. Now, what's happening on earth is immediately followed by this monumental announcement up in heaven. See, what just happened wasn't just about two prophets. Oh no. It was a signal that a huge, cosmic shift in authority was taking place. And then, the seventh and final trumpet sounds in heaven. This marks a point of no return. This is the moment that all of history has been building towards. And then comes the declaration. Loud voices in heaven proclaim it for all to hear. The entire authority structure of the world has been fundamentally and permanently changed. The rebellious rule of the nations is over, and the eternal reign of God and his Messiah has officially begun. Okay, so this heavenly declaration is then explained in 5 parts. First, it acknowledges the rebellion of the nations. The nations were angry. Then, it announces that the time for judgment has finally come. This includes accountability for everyone, the rewarding of God's faithful servants, and finally, the restoration of creation itself by destroying those who destroyed it. And to confirm all of this, to really seal the deal, John gets one final powerful vision. The temple in heaven itself is opened up, revealing the very source of God's authority to make this kind of proclamation.
And what's inside the heavenly temple? The Ark of the Covenant. Now, this is a huge deal. The Ark is the ultimate symbol of God's unbreakable promises, his covenant faithfulness. Seeing it at this exact moment means that everything that's happening, the judgment, the reward, these aren't just random acts. They are the fulfillment of God's long-standing promises.
So here's the crucial point, the main takeaway. Verse 18 tells us what God is doing. He's kicking off the final phase of judgment and reward. And then verse 19 shows us where his authority to do all that comes from. It comes from his covenant throne, and it's based on his own unbreakable faithfulness. You know, when you zoom out, this whole chapter really reveals a pattern you see again and again throughout the entire biblical story. It's this cycle, right? First, there's a faithful witness. That's followed by intense opposition and what looks like total defeat. But that then leads to a decisive, heavenly vindication and enthronement. It really shows that the path to glory goes directly through suffering. And that leaves us with a final question to think about. The story of these two witnesses, it's really a small picture of a much larger biblical theme. So what is the power of a story like this? A story that promises victory, not by somehow avoiding suffering, but by going directly through it.